All right, so welcome everybody to yet another live interview show with Become a Fearless Father. And today my guest, Daniel de Zen. Daniel, let's start right in, man, because I have a question. Because I've been thinking, like, I want to ask this one question that's like, boom, and everybody's going to be, yeah, woo. And then, and I start thinking, man, you're all about health. And then I know everybody lately is all about hacks, right? What's the biggest secret? What's the biggest hack? And I'm thinking, like, is there actually such a thing as hacks, really, when it comes to health? So I thought, who better to ask than start off with you, man? I saw some pictures. I'm like, dude, man, this guy is freaking fit. So share with us, man, are there hacks or is it some other, I don't know, mindset thing, or maybe it's a consistency thing, maybe it's whatever it is, right? What is it that can help people to really get this thing that's called health figured out and make a step today to get it right?
Yeah, so awesome question. Thank you for starters. Thank you for having me on. It's something I've been excited about, so thank you so much. So a little bit of a background information, a little bit of context for the viewers, before I jump into answering your question. So I've been a personal trainer for 11 years. And, before being a personal trainer, I've always been someone that's been into health and been into, being active and playing sports. And, I've always been a natural leader, and it's something that I've enjoyed doing. I've just naturally had people that, gravitate toward, asking me, what to do as far as, advice and guidance and stuff like that. So I thought it would be a great idea for me to get into being a personal trainer. So as far as, with me helping, fathers, what's actually happened is I've noticed since being a trainer for 11 years that, there's a heap of people and a heap of fathers that I've, spoken to over the last couple of years. And I've definitely noticed that, number one is that they take being healthy for granted until they're not healthy. And number two is that, they seem to accept a substandard level of health, the moment that they do become a father. So, and I definitely noticed that, it doesn't need to be like that. Over the years that I've been a trainer, I've been seeing so many people, have these transformations to go from accepting a substandard level of health to then, taking responsibility and realizing that they don't have to have that, that poor level of health, and they don't have to wake up feeling like crap in order to do something, with their life. And on top of that, they notice that, by them taking responsibility for their actions and for their health, is that they're also going to be a better role model for their children and also, for their family. And that's something that means quite a lot to me as well, because I have two children myself, a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I've definitely noticed that my habits and my nutritional, how I eat and how I train and, how I live definitely rubs off on them. And I think, it's really, really important that we're good role models as far as parents goes, because, it's like the old saying, monkey see, monkey do. So I think it's really, really important that, we are good role models, and, we set the standard by actually doing it ourselves, which, I find, that's why I got into the actual space of working with fathers, is because I find it's a group of people that, haven't really got that sorted yet, in terms of, what's going on. And there's a lot of help that's needed.
No, absolutely. It's hard, man, because, well, and in my case, as you know, it's not specific just to dads, right? It's not a dad. It's just like dadpreneur. There's not just, you have your fixed 9 to 5 that you always go to, and then you have a fixed schedule. It's like, I got to work nights as well. I got to make it work. It's difficult to get that set up. So we definitely need guys like you to keep us reminding of the fact that, look, man, there's a way, right? So, you already shared a little bit, man. I appreciate you sharing this. What is your, because that's one of the things that I wanted to answer on. What is your view on it looks like a trend going around, thinking like people just want the hacks, right? The quick fixes, right? What's your view on that when it comes to health?
Yeah, great question. So I think what's really important, and every time I get asked a similar question, I think it's very important that we go a few steps back when it comes to you know, that quick fix, you know, hacks, you know, like you speak of. And I think it's really important that people dive into what it is exactly that they're wanting, what their goals are, and what they're really wanting out of their training, and you know, why it is that they're going to start eating healthier. You know, I think you know, the superficial goals tend to be, you know, that they want to look good, you know, when they're in, you know, at the beach, they want to look good, you know, when they look in the mirror, they want to be proud. But you know, when we actually start to dig a little bit deeper, what we actually find is that it's far more of a deeper goal than that, as far as, you know, it goes beyond the aesthetics, and it goes beyond, you know, anything like that, and it goes more into, you know, I want to live longer, to, you know, to be able to enjoy the years as a parent. You know, I want to you know, I want to wake up and actually feel good about myself, and not have, you know, crappy energy levels, you know. So I like to help people to really go a few levels deeper than, you know, the superficial goals. Not that they're not important, you know, the goals of, you know, looking better, you know, at the beach or in the mirror, or any of those kinds of goals. But I think it's really important is, if we're going to achieve long-term sustaining goals, that we first work out, you know, exactly what it is that are the real motivating and the driving factors. Because those superficial ones, although they can be good, I have found in the years that they just staying at that level there will tend to, you know, prevent people from going to the next level and having that long-term lasting results that people are actually after. So it's really, really important that, first off, that whoever is, you know, going out to set their goals as far as their health is concerned, is that they make sure exactly they work out, you know, why it is that they really want to achieve, you know, fat loss, for example, why it is that they are wanting to achieve muscle gain, why it is that they're wanting to achieve whatever goals that they've set themselves out. And just keep asking the question why, you know. So I want to look better at the beach. Okay, why is that important to you? Because I want to feel better about myself. Well, why is that important to you? So if we start digging really deep into those goals, then what we end up getting to is a real reason, the real driving and motivating factors of why someone's actually wanting to do something. Because if we tap into that, then we're so much more likely to actually get and stay on the path of, you know, of the goals that we're actually wanting to achieve. So to answer your question, you know, there's not really a quick fix, and, you know, that doesn't really sound too sexy, because we're always after, especially in this day and age, you know, everything now, and, you know, instant gratification, and not delaying any of that. And, you know, we want everything, you know, at the click of a button. But unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that when it comes to health and fitness. You know, we need to really work out, first and foremost, you know, what it is exactly that we're actually wanting, and the real reasons, those motivating factors that I was talking about. And then just expand on that, you know, and always have that in the back of the mind. You know, I'm a really big fan of having list writing. I think list writing is really cool because it gets, you know, what's going on around in the head and circulating, you know, keeping us up at night potentially onto paper, and that, you know, it's something tangible that we can see, we can cross off, or, you know, whether it's in a digital form or on a piece of paper, it doesn't really matter. But it's just important that, you know, with list writing, that you're actually getting out what's in the head onto a piece of paper, and you're working out, you know, strategically, step by step, you know, just like following a recipe, for example, you know, step 1, step 2, step 3, and always going back to, again, like I said, that really important motivating factor, whether it be I want to live longer, as, you know, and be there for my children. I don't want to, you know, die young like my dad did because he didn't look after his health. You know, whatever the motivating factor is, those real deep, juicy goals, you know, or motivating factors is what's going to keep people on the path of continuously living a healthy and an abundant life.
Absolutely.
So that was a really long one.
No, Daniel, that was perfect. That was perfect.
Way to it.
So, but that's the deal, right? So everybody's out for those hacks, and I think when it comes to health, we got to have a long-term goal, as you said. So I align with that. I like it. My goal is to have everlasting energy. And when you say, like, you look at your kids, I'm actually looking at my grandkids already. Not saying I'm going to have any, but I'm thinking that far ahead, thinking like, okay, I am right now running around with my kids. I actually want to be that fit that I can also be doing that when I'm a granddad. if I have the pleasure of being one, right? Instead of being the granddads that I see a lot walking around with crutches, and anything can happen. So I feel sorry for them. But there's a lot that they come and you sit on the bench and they don't do anything, and it's like, I don't want to be that one. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate that. Before we go any further, Daniel, you already shared you're a personal trainer for 11 years already. You got 2 kids, 3 and 7 years old. What else can you share with us that we don't know yet about Daniel?
Okay, so I've competed in 2 bodybuilding competitions. So I think it was about 8 years ago, I competed in a bodybuilding competition, and I used me entering into those 2 competitions to work towards something. I'm very much a goals orientated person, and if I feel like I'm not working toward something, then I will constantly question why it is that I'm actually training and getting up and going to the gym every single day. So I used that as an excuse for me to train like a maniac. And I used that to pretty much show off, I guess, to get up on stage and be proud, be proud for, for my hard work and my achievement. So I did 2 bodybuilding competitions within a couple of weeks of each other. And then after that, I actually entered myself into a triathlon. So I went from one extreme of the sport to the other, one in terms of aesthetically looking good, but not necessarily being too fit, to actually having to drop a fair bit of weight and muscle and be as efficient as possible and be as fit as possible. So that was really interesting, because the bodybuilding thing really taught me a lot about how important our relationship with food is. Because we read about in articles and stuff, and obviously most people know how important it is to eat well and calories in versus calories out. But I really was able to learn and appreciate it on a much deeper level by simply taking myself through the process of going into a bodybuilding competition. It was very, very physically and emotionally taxing. And I guess because it was very, very challenging, I learned a lot about myself and my interaction with food, and how it made me feel, and how much I missed, and took for granted, the certain things that I used to be able to eat and not think anything of it. And now everything was counted to the last calorie, which was driving me crazy. But the thing is, it was a good process to go through. It was a very important process to go through, because it made me realize of how important, just the food part of our lives actually is. Like, I would be going to bed. I'd be so low in body fat that I'd be going to bed with a beanie and 2 pairs of tracksuit pants on, just freezing, because I had no body fat to act as an insulation. So that's just one little thing that I found that was really, really tough.
That's insane. That's awesome, man. And Mary, tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, okay. So my wife, Melissa, we've been married for 8 years, I think now. Coming up to 8 years now. We met at a CD nightclub in a place in the city of Sydney CBD, called King's Cross. I'm sure most people would have heard of that. If they haven't, then do a quick Google search and you'll see what it's actually known for, which is a lot of crime and drug dealers and stuff like that. So it's not the most glamorous part of the Sydney CBD, but that's where we met. So we met at a nightclub, and we had our first son. We had our first child, Julian, about 1 year after we got married. And yeah, so she's quite supportive, and she has no choice but to follow that nutrition and that training program, which she's actually started a recent one that I got her on training program. So I've been enjoying hearing her complain about muscle soreness day in, day out for the last 2 weeks. So we've been married for 8 years, and yeah, we've got two beautiful children, and there's no plans to have any more. I'm very, very happy with the two. So a 7 and a 3-year-old suits me fine. In fact, before we even had children, I knew that I didn't want any more than two, so I was quite content with working with two children. So I want to kind of give them the most amount of time possible, and I thought two's perfect, a boy and a girl, and I'm done.
Exactly. I hear you on that part. Actually, no, my wife hears you on that part. I do not. I want another one. But that's all right. We'll see. I'm still working on the convincing part, and if not, it's okay too. So
this is a different conversation, mate.
Yeah. You just shared something that's pretty cool to continue on. You just said, like, and my wife is starting and she's getting really sore. I just restarted again. I've been having an injury with my foot, and I've finally been able to after the summer, now the kids are back in school, get a pretty cool rhythm going on. But man, the first time I started doing my TRX workout again, whoo, I was sore, right? And I was talking about this with my coach, and he's like, man, you got to feel sore to it for being effective for your training, right? And immediately, and I'm not sure if you meant that, but immediately start triggering with me like the whole thing that you see as well on the scene. No pain, no gain. I'm like, man, I like a little bit of pain, but there's something like too much pain, right? What's your thought? What's your philosophy on training to a certain maximum extent?
Yeah, good question. So when it comes to training, I always like to have the longevity in mind. I find a lot of people, they tend to go from not doing anything as far as exercise goes and having a pretty poor diet, and then they'll go on this health kick. Something will kind of drive them to want to take action and do something different, and so they'll go from one extreme to the other. And now our bodies and our mind as well don't particularly like when we have these huge extremes. So we go from doing nothing to we're training now 6 times a week. Our diet has radically changed. In the short term, that can work quite well. But the problem is in the long term, if there's a huge change in from what the person was currently doing to now, or what they were doing before to now what they're currently doing, if there's too big of a jump, too big of a leap, then what tends to happen is it tends to be quite unsustainable in the sense that the body and the mind just can't keep up. So you mentioned that soreness thing. A little bit of soreness is okay. Initially, sometimes the body gets really, really sore, and that's fine. But the thing is, ideally, it's up to the individual as well. Some people are more comfortable with pain than others, to the varying degrees. But I think it's really important that it's something, the plan that someone's following is very sustainable. And what sustainable means to you is very different to what sustainable means to me. And that's why it's really important to work with an expert and a coach, is because they're going to work that out for you. Because we tend to get carried away when we get on these health kicks and we start training and eating better again, and we go, like I said, from one extreme to the other, and that's great in the short term, but often that's in the long term. The long term results suffer because it's just unsustainable, and we just throw up our hands often and say, I'll just go back to what I was doing before, because what I was doing before is way easier. So we as humans tend to always go with the path of least resistance, and if the least resistant path means that we're going to go back to what we were doing before, then that's sometimes most of the time what we end up doing. So it's really important that a proper plan is followed to ensure the longevity of the training, and a proper plan is followed so that we don't run into problems like injuries, overtraining, boredom as well. That's a huge one. I find a lot of people kind of stop their health kick, and they stop training at the gym because they just get bored of doing the same thing day in, day out. So being a trainer, I've definitely noticed that there's two groups of people. So there's ones that will come in and will do the same thing, so day in, day out, I see them, they're doing the same thing on the same day. I can almost tell them what exercise they're doing after the next, because I've seen it happen so many times. So that's the first group. Or the second group is they'll come in and they'll always be doing different things. So they'll come and do a leg press, and then they'll go over to that side of the gym, and then there's no real structure to it. And both groups, although those two groups it's still a really good thing of what they're doing as far as exercise goes. The longevity of those two groups tend to be quite low, because the first group of always doing the same thing tends to lead to boredom, and overtraining and injuries, and sometimes all of those three together. And the second group of always doing different things, they don't give their body enough time to adjust to what it is that they're doing in the stimulus, and therefore as a result their body never gets conditioned to really anything, because it's going from here to there to there. There's no real method that they're following, so that again obviously leads to not getting the best results, because the body has never really had a chance to get used to anything.
Exactly. I like that. Boredom is a big issue, I wrote down, which is true. That's the reason why I don't go to the gym to lift weights. I hate it. And not just for that reason, also for the reason that, and this is just silly, I know, but when I was younger and I did go to the gym, right? And one time I was sitting there and I was on the bike, and I didn't notice what was going on until there's three guys, one was laying down, they had to put a lot of weights on. And all of a sudden, you hear the music stop in a certain room. The door went open, and this guy started lifting, going, "No!" And I saw all the women coming out. I was like, "Man, if this is what the gym is about, I'm out. This is definitely out." So I still have that image to this day, man. I think I was like 19 or something. So I figured that one. Now I'm 40, almost 42. So no gym for me. But does that really matter? Like, does one to have to be fit, does it have to be lifting weights, or does it completely depend on what kind of goal you have for what you're trying to achieve with your health, with your body?
Yeah, so it completely depends on what it is that the person's wanting, what their goals are. So most of the people that I talk to, and most of the people that we all talk to, they tend to want to have two main goals. So the first one being is that they want to reduce their body fat, and the second one is that they're wanting to put on muscle, put on some degree of muscle, whether it's female or a male. We tend to want to either tone up, which is just the definition of actually putting on a little bit of muscle and dropping the body fat levels. So it's definitely not important to be. You don't have to be at the gym. There's heaps of different ways that exercise can be done, and that's the beauty of it. I think it's important that the person just finds out what jives with them, because the gym isn't for everyone, and that's okay, as long as they're finding an alternative, an alternative measure to be burning the calories, whether that's going for a run, whether that's getting involved in a sport. It's all those incidental bits of calorie burning and exercise that sometimes even something like sport can be really good at, because we don't even realize that we're actually exercising. We're chasing after the ball, or we're hitting the tennis ball with a racket, so that's why sports can sometimes be a good alternative. But the thing is, when it comes to putting on muscle and reducing body fat, the gym tends to be one of the better places to do that, because in order to put on muscle, what we need to do is we need to actually be stressing the muscle, and putting it under a certain amount of resistance. And that's not really something that sport can do. And that's not really something like running can do. Lifting weights is definitely the most effective way to be putting on muscle. And it's not the most effective way of dropping body fat, because in my opinion, I think running is probably the best calorie burner there is out there. But again, some people aren't able to run. Some people aren't able to play sports. So some people have a lot of people have these limitations of what they can and can't do, and the gym tends to be a good environment, because whether someone is a real beginner or have never even stepped foot into a gym, or whether they're a pro weightlifter, it can cater for pretty much, the whole group of people. Whereas, something like a sport or running, if someone's knees are shot, and they're really sore and they've got arthritis kicking in, then there's no such thing as going for a run. It's just not going to happen. So I guess that, people need to work within what their physical body will allow them to do. So it's not so much that you have to be in the gym. Burning calories anyway is or even reducing the amount of intake in calories can help someone to lose fat. But as far as losing fat and also putting on muscle, the most effective way to put on muscle is by definitely stressing the muscle. And the way that we do that is through weights training, in terms of the most effective way.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the things you went over it real quick, and I think in the previous question, but very important for all you dadpreneurs out there listening, like the biggest advice pretty much is, if you want to improve on your health, get a coach, get an expert. I have right now, and it's absolutely changed the game for me, and it makes me go more gradually. I found one that fits me. I'm very difficult. But I think that's the best advice. So for you dadpreneurs out there listening right now and really like, wow, I really enjoy what Daniel's saying, reach out to him, right? And he's friends with me on Facebook. He will immediately have a conversation with me for sure. Reach out to him, ask him questions, and see if that fits with you, and see if you can work with him. For example, I highly recommend it, because that's what it's all about. Get a professional. Stop trying to find it yourself. And that's what I want to talk with you about as well, Danny, because that's one of the biggest struggles that I had. There's so much stuff and so much, like you say A, and the other guy just says, no, we have to do Z, right? Is that much of a difference when it comes to our health? It's driving me absolutely nuts. So how does one then actually go about making sure that they find the right coach that fits their needs, to achieve their goals?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that you do a little bit of homework on your coach, whatever it may be. I think it's important that you have a look at who they've worked with, who their audience is, who they tend to kind of be working with day in, day out. It's really important that they work with you and your limitations, and they have the experience with what you're wanting. I find a lot of trainers, they tend to take on clients and train them the way that they train themselves, for example. And that tends to be a lot of bodybuilding style training. And there's nothing wrong with bodybuilding style training. But the thing is, at the end of the day, if the client isn't interested in being a bodybuilder, then the question needs to be asked, why is it that you're training like a bodybuilder if you're not wanting to get up on stage? Mm-hmm. So the goals and the training need to have a correlation. And if they don't have that correlation, then, it's not the most effective way to be training, in my opinion. So as far as, having a coach, the best thing about one is that they've usually been there and done that. Whatever it is, goals that you're wanting to achieve, they've usually done it with 100, 200, 300, sometimes thousands of people in the past. So they have that experience, and that's what they're being paid for, is that that you're going to bypass a lot of the mistakes that they potentially made with other clients, and you're going to get to the result a lot quicker and a lot more effective as well. So I like the saying, investing time to save money, not wasting time to save money. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, a business coach that I had years ago instilled in me. And it's something that, is really, really important to me. Is I see a lot of people, especially, when they get into these, health kicks, is that they're wasting a lot of time to potentially save money by not getting a coach, but then they wind up either not getting the results and they wind up wasting a lot of time and then potentially dropping off and not really, losing that interest and stuff. So what the money with the coach is invested into is, the experience that they've had, potentially years of working with people just like themselves to take them, from where they are to where they want to be. And like we said before, not doing those huge leaps, and just making progressive daily changes, to their diet, to their training, that's what, that's what the money is well invested for, is because they've been there, done that, and they know exactly where you are here and where you want to be, and they create those steps necessary in order to get to that. Whereas some people tend to think that they can do it on their own, and of course it can be done on its own, but it's never going to be as good. Just like I'm sure I could paint my own house and not get a painter in, but it's probably going to look really bad. It's not going to be something that I want to show visitors when they come to the house and be proud of. It'll probably take forever. I might have potentially fall off the ladder. I don't have the right equipment. So, that's sometimes the analogy that I like to use when people ask, what's the point of investing in a coach when I can potentially do it on my own? It's like, yeah, sure, you can do it on your own, but is it going to be done as well? What are the results that are going to be coming from it? And, how long is it going to take, which is probably the most important factor.
Exactly. No, absolutely. And yeah, I totally agree, man. I personally got to say that I'm guilty of every time when I stopped and I wanted to jump back on, like go all out thinking that, I'm still as fit as I used to be. You injure yourself again, you try to get back again. And I went through that until indeed I found my coach that's now, making me slow down a little bit, follow a schedule, which is really helping me, especially with my foot. Like when you said, like, hey, some people can't run. I can run. I mean, I run today playing hide and seek with the kids. However, I can't do it on a consistent basis when it comes to like actual running because I got a trapped nerve in between my third and my fourth toe. So now he recommended go swimming, and I love it. I never thought I would, but right. So and that's where a coach really helps. He finds alternatives where you would never thought yourself of looking or thinking like, okay, is this an alternative that will actually work? Because you just don't know, right? And some things you don't know that you don't know, and that's why guys like you, that then you come in really handy. It's like all that stuff, like you've been through it. I mean, 11 years of being a personal trainer, you've pretty much had every single client out there helping you out, right? Or you helping them out. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I've seen and heard it all, mate.
yeah, exactly, right. So last thing, man, I want to dive a little bit into in regards to being an example for your kids, right? But one of the things, and that's why I like my coach, and I wanted to ask you what your views on that. I was also looking for somebody that was experienced in regards to because it's not just working out. It's also, as you mentioned, like with bodybuilding, you got to really focus on what you eat as well. And every single coach that I had when it came to dieting or whatever you want to call it, it was immediately drastically, boom, like, oh, you got to follow this, right? And I couldn't handle that for a very long time. And this guy is really like, okay, what, for the next week, just really check what are you eating, etc., right? And then little by little, taking things off, putting things on, which is, I really enjoying that, right? It's not just drastic, shoot, same as what you see with training, right? It's not immediately like, boom, full on, let's go. What's your view on that when it comes to eating and achieving your goals to make sure that you also get the full result of your workouts?
Yeah, so I think it's really important when it comes to working out someone's diet. Is that I find in my experience that a lot of people don't actually know what they're doing calories wise. Mm-hmm. What I mean by what they're doing calories wise, they don't actually know how many calories they're consuming, and it's a big problem to not know that actual number, because anything from there just becomes guesswork. Mm-hmm. So in order to achieve fat loss, for example, what we need to have done is we need to create a calorie deficit. So what that means is we've got something that's called the basal metabolic rate. Mm-hmm. And so the BMR, not the BMI, sometimes it gets confused with the BMI. So the BMI is that reading where you go from dividing your height divided by your weight, and it gives you a number. In my opinion, that's completely inaccurate anyway, but that's another conversation later. So the basal metabolic rate essentially is the amount of calories that our bodies need in order to sustain life. So that includes organ function and to general moving around, and so that's it's an amount of calories that we need to be alive. So in order to reduce body fat, what we need to do is we need to somehow create a deficit of calories from that number. So let's use 1,000 as an example of me being at my basal metabolic rate of being 1,000. In order for me to drop body fat, what I need to have done is created a deficit of calories either through exercise or either through not eating as many calories, or both. As long as I've created that deficit, then what happens is I actually reduce my body fat will come down, and as a result, I will lose weight. And if we go the other way, if there's a calorie surplus, then that means I'm going to be putting on weight. So that means if I've eaten a little bit more than I usually do, or I've exercised a little bit less and I've burnt a little bit less calories, then I put on weight. So, it's called the energy balance, and we've got calories in versus calories out. So first things first, it's really important that people work out what they're actually doing calories wise, because a lot of people that I initially work with have no idea of what they're actually doing, how many calories they're consuming. And it's a little bit of a problem, because if they don't know how many calories they're having, then it's going to be very difficult, and it's just going to be guesswork, with what to do next. So it becomes a lot easier to achieve, once we've got some tangible numbers to work with, because now we can either drop the calories from the diet, we can burn more calories through training, and somehow create that deficit. And that explains why, you hear those crazy diets in the short term, at least, working, when they go these cabbage diets and, the pumpkin soup diets, or, enter whatever diet you actually want in, they purely just work from a calorie restriction perspective. So all diets can work, but it's not really the question of if they work or not. It's more so, can they be sustainable, and can it be done in the long term? And more often than not, the answer is actually no. So, in my opinion, then there isn't really a point of doing a kind of crash diet that's going to be really calorie restrictive if it can't be sustained month in, month out, year in, year out, potentially for the rest of their lives. And this is what I tell my clients. I would much prefer to go with a slower approach to when it comes to nutrition and calories and stuff, and make sure that it's more sustainable, rather than going from one extreme to the other and it being really a huge reduction in calories, and as a result they've got crappy energy levels and they just don't feel like doing anything, and they don't train, and then they just start going backwards to what they were doing before. Because like we spoke about earlier, we like to follow the path of least resistance. So what was the question again?
Awesome.
I get carried away when I talk about this topic, because it's something that
that's quite all right, man. Just go with it. No, it was in regards to nutrition and what your path was. If it was a hard-on complete change, or if it would be more a gradual one, which you just shared. You just mentioned, like, look, I go for longevity again, right? The sustainability of your nutrition, which makes, to me, again, that makes the most sense, and that's what you're about, right? I'm about that as well, but I'm not the coach. But that's what you're about, and that's what's important. And again, for all you dads out there listening, and you're like, yes, I don't have the goal to be a bodybuilder. I have the goal to be, healthy, fit, energetic, right? And my goal is everlasting. I call it everlasting energy. I gave it a name, but then Daniel's definitely a guy that you want to get in contact with and share your goals and maybe your questions with, right? And see, maybe there even is a possibility of getting him as a coach. I don't know how busy he is, so maybe he can share that at the end of the live interview. Anyway, real quick, man, because in the beginning you mentioned, like, what's so important for us as well to being healthy. Besides all the benefits that we have for ourselves, we also are a role model, of course, towards our kids, right? Now, you got a 7-year-old, so he's like really seeing things and really developing like what he likes and stuff like that. And mentioning that as well, what are some of the things that you've seen is from you being that role model for him?
Yeah, that's a cool question. One thing that I've definitely noticed with my son Julian, so he's a 7-year-old, is that just little things have really rubbed off on him. So on a lot of water, and I've always been someone that's drunk a lot of water, and I find that wherever we go with both kids, but especially with Julian, is that he carries his water bottle around everywhere with him, and he's constantly drinking water. That he doesn't see me or Melissa, for that matter, drinking anything but water. So as a result, he doesn't know really anything better. Like, sure, when he goes to birthday parties and stuff, he'll have, you know, those juices and soft drink. But for the majority of what he's doing, he's drinking a fair bit of water. And I find it's just those little things that have rubbed off on him that make me feel really proud, because, you know, it might seem like a little thing, but our bodies are, you know, are made up of a huge proportion of water. So, you know, if we're not drinking enough water, you know, then obviously we're going to run into health problems. So it's just little things like that that I find, you know, rub off on him. You know, as far as, you know, what we're having for dinner as well, he doesn't know anything better but to, you know, to be having majority of healthy eating for dinners and lunches and for breakfast as well. So if he doesn't know any better, then he's just going to follow what it is that what he's always done. So they're the kinds of little things that I enjoy, you know, leading by example with.
Exactly. I like that. One of the struggles that we have with the youngest one, and we actually had it with the 6-year-old as well, is eating his vegetables, right? It's like, I asked him at school, it's like, is he eating? He's like, yeah, he eats everything. I'm like, all right, cool. And then we get home and I put some vegetable on his plate. He's like, I'm not eating that. The 3-year-old, right? I'm like, what do you mean you don't eat that? You're eating it at school. No, I don't like that. I'm like, really? What? I got to change, man. I'm making vegetable hamburgers. They're freaking delicious, and they don't have no idea. And I even put vegetables like paprikas and mushrooms and onions and all that stuff in there. They have no idea. They love it. They're like, hamburgers. I'm like, yep, fooling your ass. Got to do what you got to do.
We're doing the same thing. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Because the thing is, I can either make hamburgers, which is really simple to make because I just blend everything in there, or I can follow whatever I saw somebody else do and make like really cool puppets and stuff. And I'm like, that's too difficult, man. I like to keep it very simple. Yeah. So I enjoy that, man. In that regards, because yes, absolutely, water drinking is so important. So I'm glad to hear that, because we see so many kids, man, especially when we go to the playground, just drinking Coke already at 5, 6 years old. For me, that's just
crazy,
insane, right? And that's actually one of my biggest struggles at the moment. I saw it again today, and other parents with their kids, right? They're all in the gym, so or all in the playground. You kids see that as well, and then there's a store real close by with all kinds of candy and chips and all that stuff. That's my hardest struggle when it comes to trying to keep my kids, just keeping their mindset on a healthy basis and not craving for that stuff, right? It's such junk. What's your view on that? How are you trying to avoid that? Are you trying to avoid it, or are you just like, you know what, it happens?
Yeah. So my ideas with that is for as long as we can, to try to restrict that kind of junk food eating and that soft drink consuming thing. You know, reduce that as much as possible at home, because there's going to come a point, you know, when they're at birthday parties and they're out and about, that they're going to want to drink and eat that kind of stuff. You know, so my idea is, while they're still young, to try to keep that to a minimum, because they're going to be doing it at birthday parties anyway. But I try not to get too strict on them with that, because at the end of the day, they are kids, and the thing is, you know, if they're watching their buddies do it, and I really come down on Julian or Charlotte and you know, restrict them from having everything, then, you know, they're going to be no fun at parties, and they're going to feel like they're missing out. So it's definitely a challenge, you know, as a parent. You know, as far as, you know, what they're allowing them to eat and drink, it definitely is a challenge, and I think each kid is individual, you know, in their own right, and their personalities tend to respond differently as a result. But we just don't have it in the house, and if we don't have it in the house, then there's not that temptation for them to have it, and if they're not seeing us have it, then you know, they're a lot more likely to not even want it. When we go to kids' birthday parties and stuff, sometimes it's a different story, because they see their mates have it, and, you know, what have you. But for the majority of it, you know, I at least like to have the control of when they're at home, that they're not really having that stuff. And if they have it at, birthday party on occasion, then I don't tend to get too fussed about it. Because at the end of the day, like I said, they're kids and, they're challenging.
No, absolutely. But have you noticed that if they went on that birthday party and they got the big bags of candy and all that kind of stuff, that their character changes? They get different, right? And not in a good way, to be honest. That's what makes me worry. Is like, what? That's got to be so much crap in there for them to change from one person to being a freaking devil. And all of a sudden, when the sugar runs out, getting to such a mood swing, right, to be really difficult to handle. It's like, man, I try to explain that to them and show it to them, but they're still very young. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yes. Last thing, man, because we're at the end, and I want to give you the opportunity, Daniel, for all those Dadpreneurs that are either with us right now live, and I hope if you are, guys, make sure that you share thumbs up or heart, whatever it is, for the appreciation for Daniel coming on the show. If you're watching a replay, same thing. And if you're watching a replay on YouTube and a podcast, make sure you leave a message. How can people get in contact with you, follow you, watch your content, whatever it is?
Yeah, so I have a online business called the Dad Bod Project. So the Dad Bod Project. And it's all about working with fathers and getting them to be a better version of themselves. It's something that, that means a lot to me as well, because I am a dad myself. So I've dedicated an entire business into working with dads and helping them to get more active and to love who and what they see in the mirror again, because I find that it's an area that needs a lot of work, and there's a lot of dads out there that are accepting a substandard level of health, and it doesn't need to be like that. They don't need to wake up feeling having bad energy levels, and they don't have to accept not being able to be the healthiest and most active person that they can be. So that's called the Dad Bod Project. I've actually got a closed group of a whole bunch of dads in there, and we share success stories with each other. We ask each other questions, and I find that community to be really effective at just getting us all together and being able to have a safe space where we can communicate freely without judgment and have that supportive environment. I think environment is key, and especially with these kinds of health journeys, it's really important that we work and we share our stories with people on a similar kind of journey. So that's why I created that group, and it's really exciting to see some of the guys telling me that they couldn't be bothered to get out to the gym, for example, and they did because they've seen others do it. So there's something really powerful in that community, that tribe.
Yep. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. For those that are watching the replay on YouTube or listening to the podcast, the links to the group, and if that's okay with Daniel, I'll put in his profile as well. You can get straight in contact with him. Just click on the links and get in contact with him and see all his content and enjoy it. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else. Daniel, stay on a little bit longer after we're done. Appreciate you for being on the show, Daniel. Everybody else, thank you for watching, listening. I hope you've been as crazy as me making notes. Very important. Have an amazing rest of the day, and I will see everyone again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Are you still meeting up with your friends now that you're a father? Kids making you stress out. You got no time for yourself to work out, read, or relax. Can you still remember the time you were hanging out with your friends, feeling energetic, happy, and confident? Spending time together and talking about your life and your crazy dreams. You're feeling alone now, don't you? No one to share your challenges with, and you're just running around from one storm into the next. Well, it's time to change this now. Join me and the Brotherhood of Fearless Fathers to speak on a weekly basis with like-minded dads to crush your challenges, face your fears with determination, be held accountable, and regain control of your life. If you want to become the hero your family needs you to be, then go to becomeafearlessfather.com/brotherhood. I'm looking forward to seeing you on one of our next calls.